Okay, good evening everyone. Hello, thank you so much for coming. My name's Sarah Penfold. I'm the Vice President Education of the LSA for this year. And welcome to our very first Women in Law online panel. This year we give you brand new speakers, a brand new theme, and of course a brand new mode of delivery. But I promise you'll leave this evening with the same feelings you've had after past Women in Law breakfasts, inspiration and a glass half full approach to the future, showing you gender is not determinative of success. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Anne-Marie David, Director of the College of Law and our host for this evening. Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Thanks so much, Sarah, and welcome everyone. It's lovely. This is one of my favourite events of the year, and I'm so pleased that we were able to bring it to you via Zoom this year. It's so much nicer to be with each other in person, but we can still have a fabulous conversation. So as they say, strap in. It's going to be a wonderfully exciting ride. We've got some fabulous panel members who I know are not strangers to you. So without further ado, let me introduce our panel. Lynn Weathered, co-founder of the Griffith University Innocence Project. Welcome, Lynn. I was saying offline, everyone, that I'm in awe of Lynn. I've only ever known of Lynn's work, and it was always, when I was a law student, known as the sexy option. You've got to go to Griffith because they've got the Innocence Project. So I dare say you've got people knocking your door down, constantly trying to get into the program. Welcome, Lynn. We're looking forward to hearing about your career in that respect. Secondly, on our program tonight, Simone Fraser. Simone is a wonderful legal practitioner on the gorgeous Gold Coast, and she's done everything. She's been a sole practitioner, she's been a private practitioner, she's been a corporate lawyer, and now, of course, she's at the bar. And she's very skilled at mediation and family law arbitration. And we're very keen to learn how she's melded her legal studies and her legal career with management training. Simone also holds an MBA, which is quite extraordinary. Not many do. And last but not least this evening, my colleague, Bridget Cullen. Bridget, I know, is still lecturing and a favourite at Griffith University, but she's also one of our favourite mentors at the College of Law. And when she's not doing that for us, she's also a member of the AAT. She's a very experienced tribunal member, and she is all over negotiation, alternative dispute resolution and decision making. She is truly an expert in her arena. But for tonight, I really want to celebrate the fact that she is the current Woman Lawyer of the Year, crowned as such at the Women Lawyers Association of Queensland annual gala dinner last year. And we were all very excited to see Bridget win that coveted prize. So welcome one and all to our panel. And if I can say to our participants out there in Zoom land, don't be quiet. If you've got questions, you've got comments, you've got the chat function, we can see that, and we've got a moderator who can feed questions through to us. So please, as something sparks your interest or your curiosity, do let us know. But let me start by asking our panel members now. We all know they've had fabulous careers as lawyers, but we also want to know what they do when they're not lawyering, because a lot of people think to be a successful lawyer, you've got to go at it 24/7, and that's just not the case. So let me first ask you, Lynn. You've built this incredible reputation around the work you've done, and now I believe you're about to embark on a PhD. Is there any time just to be Lynn? What do you do when you're not lawyering?
I think that's so important for students and practitioners to have that time, and I think well-being in the legal profession is becoming a really known need to look after that. I didn't have balance when I started. I was just so enthusiastic about the project that I couldn't even talk about anything else. But so I had to learn along the way that actually you do need to just take some time out on the weekends, do some traveling. And I think especially when you're working with challenging situations and people in challenging situations, and what can sometimes be that darker side of life, it's really nice to balance that with things like music and nature and just some of the nicer things in life. So yes, I've managed some lovely travel and beautiful music, and watched some fabulous tango. I'm a tango enthusiast. So, I went to Argentina and learned to tango at one point, but it's all forgotten now.
So I think for our audience, Lynn, when the theme of our session tonight is purpose fuels passion, clearly it can work in reverse as well. Your passion actually does fit the purpose. And if you obviously have many sides to your personality, many sides to your life. You bring all that together in your lawyering. And I dare say, you know, your passion outside is very much what fuels what you do in terms of the Innocence Project. So wonderful wonderful to hear you found balance doing that very early on. What about you, Simone? What do you do when you're not lawyering there at the French Quarter?
So I would have to profess to not having a great deal of work-life balance. As a barrister, probably work a little bit too much, but I do have some aspects of my life which I think force balance. I've got 3 children who are 5, 8 and 10, and they are very busy little people. So they do bring, a level of balance to my life. I do not work on a Saturday, for example, because that's the day that I'm doing things with them and taking them to their activities and all those sorts of things. So I think having them is probably the one thing that gives me the greatest sense of balance, because I really do enjoy everything that I do with them. And I often joke that if I hadn't had children before I went to the bar, I might have forgotten to do it, because I am the sort of person who gets, I'm fairly intense with my work. So yeah, I don't have a great deal of time for things other than my children and my work, but I do try and also do some exercise. So I've got a personal trainer that I work with a few times a week, and I've managed to make that work in that she works near my chambers on the Gold Coast. So when I'm down on the Gold Coast and not in the chambers in Brisbane, I try and see her a couple of times a week too. So it's still a work in progress, though. I wouldn't say that my work-life balance is fabulous, but it's also about remembering that if you have a free day, then take that day and do something enjoyable with it. Even if it means going to the shops and having a coffee, that might be an achievement for that day. So that's a good thing.
And when you consider everything you've achieved, Simone, over the years, I mean, multiple qualifications, so much experience across various arenas, you are fitting it all in.
I'm not very good at relaxing. So I'm the sort of person that if I have a spare moment, I'd probably go and read a brief or, that sort of thing. So the relaxation is still, I think it is a work in progress, because I think, like Lynn said, you've got to have balance, particularly when you're working in fairly taxing areas of the law. So yeah, I'm busy, but that's not always a good thing.
Yes, law can be a very difficult master, and we've got to learn to master it ourselves, I think. What about you, Bridget? You've got a very busy life, I know, in all aspects of your life. How do you balance that when you're not working?
Well, my life sounds a lot like Simone's, with the exception that I don't have a personal trainer, even though I probably now need one thanks to COVID, because things just don't fit the way that they did back in March. I don't know. I find happiness really in the small things. And so, I like dogs and coffee, a glass of wine, generally enjoy being around people. And I have reasonably maybe low expectations for what I find fun, which, is spending time with my kids and my family and friends. And, I'm not, I like to bake. I do a lot of baking, which at least I find useful, because I'm a bit of a utilitarian, and, you achieve something at the end of it. But yes, I don't have great balance in the sense that I think people think about, trying to structure time. But because I like what I do, I'm pretty happy to have my foot on the pedal. If I didn't enjoy what I do, I think, I could see that there would be a lot more problems with my happiness in life.
And I think what you've all said to me really does illustrate the theme that purpose fuels your passion. So you are all very happy in the lawyering you do, all 3 very different facets of lawyering. You're all very, very excited by it, but you are driven also to find that human angle which keeps you sane. We have to, what do they say about keeping your own tank topped up so that you can keep motoring along? And I'm grateful to see that we've got 3 role models who are trying their best to achieve that. And we're not all Wonder Women, we're not superheroes, but at least you're heading down that path, which is a great great sense of role modelling. Now, we are talking about women in law this evening, and we all know that we've got a lot of work yet to do to move the dial in terms of gender equality. I know our audience is very keen to know what they can do, being the succession plan for our profession that they are. They're coming in and they're going to take over the role of leadership in our profession. Ladies, I'm going to ask you what may be a personal question, but have any of you actually faced discrimination or inequality in your time? And can I ask you how you handle that and what advice you'd give to our audience coming through the ranks now if they were actually to face similar discrimination or inequality as they commence their careers in law? Simone, I might ask you first of all.
Sorry, I've just got to remember to unmute myself. I think discrimination and inequality is a really interesting issue. I would have to say, in my experience, interestingly, some of my most difficult employers were in fact women. So I think that women ourselves have a great deal to do in terms of shifting the experience and the perception of a number of particularly young female legal graduates and employees. I think that there's still a perception, perhaps less so now, but certainly 15 years ago, that, you know, well, I did it really hard and you know, we all worked crazy hours, so you have to do the same. And in my experience, I've actually found women to be more challenging in that regard than I have male employers. So I think we all actually should take responsibility for shifting our own mindsets and what it means to be successful and what we're expecting from young female legal graduates. I also have a disability, so I use a wheelchair. So the concept of discrimination to me is not something that I regularly give a great deal of thought to be honest. I haven't necessarily experienced discrimination either as a woman or as a person with a disability, or perhaps I have, but I'm not aware of it. So people have said to me, you know, do you think that you don't, you know, you might not be briefed because you're a woman, or you might not be briefed because you're a person in a wheelchair? And equally, you know, there are solicitors who will say to me, I want to brief you because you are a woman. So this particular client needs a female barrister, or, you know, we need a female barrister to cross-examine this particular person. So I think it's all about how we perceive things, and I don't necessarily see that, I don't view it as discrimination. I view it as we all have something to offer. It's about how we consider that. And I think one of the greatest tragedies is when you see, and sometimes you do often see it in young female legal graduates, is that they feel a need to become masculine. And I don't mean masculine physically, I mean masculine in their approach, and at times can be quite aggressive and things like that. And I think that's a shame. I think if we all think that we, you know, as women or men or people with disabilities or not, or whatever it is that your particular, how you identify, that we've all got something to offer, and don't see it as a negative or a downside. In fact, see the fact that you're a female, young female lawyer as a positive thing, and what do I have to bring to the situation that perhaps my male colleague doesn't have? That's a good way of changing things and turning things around. And I think in your own mind, if you don't see discrimination as a possible issue, that actually helps to change the dialogue.
No, it's great advice, really great advice. Lynn, I expect you've seen a lot in your time through the Innocence Project. Have you or the clients you deal with spoken to you about discrimination?
So not necessarily, no. Like the world has changed. I've been doing this project now for 20 years, which is a long time, and I've just stepped off being the director and now on the advisory board. When I was studying law and before doing it, there were definitely challenges from being a woman. You know, I was a sole parent, and so there were aspects of juggling that I needed to deal with. In terms of all the different demands. That was tricky. Again, a bit like Simone, I didn't really feel I felt discrimination. And in fact, my experience in universities is that they're very aware of this important issue, and they know they sort of need to be a leader in that as well, in discrimination of any kind, really. And I've also witnessed, just wonderful female and male graduates, really full of confidence and moving into the future, I think, with excitement and, so many possibilities for them that I don't think were there, way. I think things have definitely changed. And while there's still a way to go, I think the more women out there who can support each other and men, if we all supported each other. I mean, I had tremendous support in getting the project started from both men and women within the law school and within the legal fraternity. It wouldn't have been possible. It was a collaboration in that sense.
Actually, that's a wonderful point, because sometimes we think that our only allies are within the legal profession. But of course, the legal profession and legal practice is changing. So you can actually look for support outside. And in terms of discrimination and inequality, I think we're finding that the more women look for supporters, whether they be sponsors or mentors beyond the profession, the more they bring their list of talents and skills and connections. It just blossoms. So I think you're right. Sort of looking beyond just those people immediately around us for support is probably a good action. What about you, Bridget? I remember when in your award, when you received your award, in your speech, you spoke about being proactive, about asking for help. And I've not forgotten that. I think that's a really good point. Is that something you've used throughout your career and your life?
Probably not as best as I could have, which is why I think it is important, to put yourself out there. I mean, certainly for me, because I, was a single mother for a period of time, and in circumstances, where I think it would be fair to say, I'd also gone through a pretty difficult, divorce, and I had 3 kids, and one of my children requires 24/7 care because he's quite profoundly disabled. I found it hard to work in a very, structured environment where there was the expectation that I would be at work at 8:00 in the morning, because that was the period of time that I was, trying to make sure that everybody had their school lunch and was out the door, and the expectation of travel. And so I was very grateful that my colleagues kind of surrounded me, and without my having asked, stepped in and said, look, it's ridiculous that you're going to spend, $2,000 for a week of childcare. We will do extra circuits ourselves, and you can do the ones like you go out to Ipswich and, you be the person that does all of the, miserable tree disputes locally, but we'll take the heat for you and go to Townsville. I thought, well, thank God, because otherwise I would have had a lot of, difficulty, maintaining my role, and would have had to have, considered if I was getting a lot of pressure, whether I could keep doing it. So certainly my colleagues came to my aid, and I think, that was a feature of, I've worked with really good people, but I have also tried very hard to be a good colleague myself. So, I try to not be, I'm not judgmental, or, I'm sure there's somebody out there who will disagree, but, I try to be good to people. And in return, I've found that mostly I get that back.
Yes, it's interesting that you say that, and that swings right back to what Simone was saying. It's unfortunate that many of us have had supervisors, managers, leaders ahead of us who have not been supportive, and in some cases those are women. It's a shame, because if we can support one another, I think that comes back to you tenfold. So I'm hoping that if we role model generosity of spirit and support for those coming through the profession now, that we will see them passing that on. So paying it forward for the good of the profession. And I'm grateful that I know all 3 of you do that in your role. So thank you for that. All right, ladies, we're here to talk about purpose, fueling passion. Let's talk about your careers. I want to know, you're all fabulous leaders now in your success stories. Did you know where you wanted to go? And did you actually actively plan and set goals to get there? or was it just serendipity? I'm very keen to find out how you've arrived here. So should we go to Lynn? Would you like to respond to that question first?
Just need to unmute myself there. It was a long, winding road that turned back on itself and went all sorts of different directions. And I was thinking about this for tonight, and it really was never planned. I mean, I started my law degree because I was working at Bond University Law School at the time, and in the law school I thought, oh, this is a wonderful opportunity. I started studying at that time. Fell in love with the words and the way, the words in law could make such a difference to people's lives. And then as I studied, I got interested in criminal law. And I thought that's the area, I would like to sort of teach in if I do teach. And then I remember being at the movies one night, watching the movie The Hurricane, which was about Reuben Hurricane Carter, and thinking, oh, I'd love to do a job like that, but I guess that'll just never happen. And then a few years later, one of the lawyers, Jason Murakami from Nice Lawyers at the time, came and approached Griffith University, where I was teaching criminal law and evidence at the time, and said, look, there's this thing in the US called the Innocence Project. It's amazing. We can use students to help investigate cases where people might be innocent of the crime they've been convicted of. And straight away, I knew that was what I wanted to do. With every fiber of my being, because it appealed to all my values. So I could never have planned that. But I suppose in a way, by following my interests and so forth, I was prepared for that opportunity and grabbed it and worked, obviously, to make it happen and create it. But no, I mean, there were no other innocence projects in Australia at the time. And so it was, again, through collaboration of like-minded people, and then gathering more and more like-minded people around us as we've gone on, and amazing sort of lawyers and so forth, and judges. So I don't think you have to know where you're going. I think if you do, that's fantastic, and if you want to plan it, that's fantastic. But I wouldn't worry if you don't, if students don't know. As long as they're, moving along in a direction and doing their best at whatever is there at the time. And I think life goes in a straight line anyway.
And of course, you've not stopped. You're going to invest even further now in yourself, and also in this passion area for you with doing a PhD.
Yes, well, it's something I really should have been doing all along, but I got so invested in the work that I just couldn't find the time and the energy to put into it. So now I'm really looking at, with everything I've learned over the years, some of the parts that now interest me the most, and how I might incorporate that in a doctorate. Yeah.
I dare say we'll see you having side hustles, doing other things, keeping up the law reform jobs and things.
We'll see.
Wonderful. Bridget, what about you? I mean, you've had, this wonderful career path that has sort of swayed left, right and centre, but you're just very much on track.
Well, it's funny. I don't actually feel that I've settled my own career. I feel like it's continuing. I don't feel like I've arrived where I'll be forever. So, I hope. I mean, I like what I do. I'm interested in what I do. But I've always got my eye on what's next. And I've never been fussy about, what it is. If it looks interesting, if I can continue to pay my mortgage, I'll give it a whirl. But I had no plan. And, there are some areas of law I like better than others. I prefer law that involves people. I'm probably not a natural, corporate type lawyer. I like industrial law, but not commercial law as such. So I don't know, I just kind of went where I could, which is why my usual advice to students is, don't wait for what's perfect, take what you can get and make the best of it. I don't think that's my phone. I'm sorry that it's ringing on the computer. Sorry. Yeah, so.
Now that's actually a question that one of our audience members posed earlier. Should you jump at the first job you've got, job offer you've got, or should you hang out and hope that something you're really passionate about arrives?
I would take what you can get, and start with that, and then build your network. And if you don't enjoy it, try and move sideways. But don't expect that the job you take will be the job that you are in 2 or even 3 years. You need to look at it holistically and try and develop a set of skills that you can translate into other roles.
Absolutely.
Nobody wants to be earning in 5 years' time what you're earning today. You've got to always be thinking about where is the career pathway here.
And I think too, amassing as much skill and information, knowledge and connection while you're doing whatever that job is. Nothing is ever wasted. I'm sure you'll agree.
Yes, and I'll just let you know, that was my husband I hung up on.
Oh.
Obviously, no one needs to hear from him now. So.
We'll bring him into the equation later. Oh dear. Righto, Simone, you're not off the hook yet. What about you? Have you set a path for yourself? You've done amazing things in your career.
No, so I think that a number of the things that have been said already are exactly the sorts of things that I would say. And to pick up on something that Anne-Marie just said, was effectively no decision or no experience is a bad decision or a bad experience. You make the best decisions that you can make at the time, and you see where they take you. At the bar, you have the opportunity to work with a number of junior solicitors or otherwise students who are still at university looking for work experience. And you often see students who are very, very concerned to make sure that they are, that's just my mum delivering me a glass of wine.
Oh, hello.
Very concerned to make sure that they have set their path and that they, that they know exactly where they're going, and this is going to lead to this, and I want to be a barrister by the time I'm 23. That actually gives me some concern, because I think there's a whole lot of living that you can do that gives you experiences and informs where you'll ultimately end up. So for my part, I went to Bond. I was fortunate enough to be on a scholarship, and I was doing a lot of sport at the time, so I really took my time completing my degree, so much so that I think they actually changed the rules once I left, so that if you're a full scholarship student, you've got to do so many subjects each semester so they get you out the other side. But at the conclusion of that, I came to the view that I didn't want to work in a law firm at that particular point in time, so I started out working as the Director of Marketing and Business Development for the Faculty of Law at Bond, where I worked for 2 years. As part of that, did my MBA, finished that degree overseas, which was all an amazing experience and something that I wouldn't have done at the age of 23 if I had been particularly, obsessive about moving into my legal career immediately. And some of those are the best stories you can tell. In fact, these beads that I'm wearing now were bought in Paris when I was 23.
Oh.
Living there. So, it's little things like that. That means something to me. It might not mean anything to anyone else. But when I returned, I then realised that it would be useful to qualify as a lawyer and to finish that process. I did a year as an associate in the Supreme Court, and at the conclusion of that, went into working in a fairly large, well-known family law firm in Brisbane. However, and that's where I wanted to work, was in family law. However, they placed me in insurance. And I was a little bit, I was not terribly inspired by the work that I was doing. So I was there late one night and came across an article about a person who had started their own investment bank. And I sent them a random email and said, I don't know anything about investment banking. I had already done my MBA by this point, but if you'd like to teach me, I'm willing to learn. I then transitioned into the family law team before being given the job in the investment bank. So it was a bit of a sliding doors moment. I then went into the family law team and loved it, but ultimately was then offered the job. So it was a really difficult decision to make. And I ultimately decided to go to the investment bank where I stayed for about 7 years. And then always thought in the back of my mind that if I wanted to come back to family law, it would always be there. I then had 2 children and went to the bar whilst on maternity leave with my second child, with the sole focus of working in family law. So I'd gone back to a firm for about 9 months to work up my experience in family law before going to the bar. So, you know, it was all a bit random, certainly not a traditional path. My husband's a barrister too, who followed a very traditional path, so that worked really well for him, but we've all just got to recognise that things work differently for different people, and there's nothing wrong with doing a number of different things along the way. Once you become a barrister, can be quite solitary. So the idea of doing a relatively solitary profession from the age of 23, 24 for the rest of your life, conceivably, might be a bit limiting. And from my perspective, I'm much like Bridget. This may not be my last career. So my view is probably do it for about 12 years and maybe go off and do something else after that. Who knows?
Well, if I may, like you, do a little bit of crystal ball gazing as to what may come next, I would suggest to you all that the legal practice is changing and the nature of our clients is changing. How many clients come to us now having Googled their problems, as we do when we go to a doctor? We Google our symptoms and come to us wanting to know more than just what the answer is. And what I'm hearing from all of you is that you bring so much more to your lawyering than just what you know about the law. You bring your life experience, you bring the people you've met and the places you've been living and the experiences you've had well beyond your legal career. And I think that's really what clients are looking for. And I think they'll actually become more demanding of that. They don't want a one-dimensional lawyer anymore. They want someone who can actually understand them holistically.
And I think particularly, sorry to interrupt, but particularly if you're wanting to work in areas of the law that involve people, so areas like crime, family, succession, probably less so if you're wanting to work as in corporate advisory, your life experience might not be so important. But certainly as a family law barrister, being able to draw on your own experiences and even just have a conversation with a person while sitting outside court. If you don't have a great deal to talk about with a person who is older than you or may have more life experience than you, that can be limiting in terms of the nature of your ongoing relationship with them. So you've got to give yourself some time, and only time can give you that life experience.
Can I add something to that?
Please, Bridget.
I think that it's important that you have just a little bit of bad luck in life in order to be successful. I mean, the resilience that I have built as a consequence of having, a child that has very high care needs, in circumstances where I have no family of my own around, and having gone through, a pretty horrific divorce, those things, while they were hard and in the case of my son continue to be hard, it has given me a level of appreciation for the resilience that I have and an ability to put myself in the shoes of other people and try and look at things from somebody else's perspective without judgment, which is very important given what I do on a day-to-day basis. But it has also really opened my eyes. So I'm grateful for that in a backwards kind of way, because I think that it's really made me the person that I now am. And I don't think I would be the same person if I didn't have the benefit of that experience.
And Bridget, I think we know in terms of well-being, and we know well-being is an issue in our profession, that sense of resilience, building that professional and personal resilience is so important, because our jobs are demanding. They're never going to change. It will always be demanding, and we need to be able to bounce back and cope. Really important advice.
It's difficult to build resilience if you don't have hardship at times, because it's otherwise a fairly abstract concept.
It is.
Putting yourself in situations, for students in situations where they might feel out of their depth or taking the job that wasn't the ideal job, that could be, in fact, the very best thing they could do at that particular time.
Yeah. No, thank you for that advice. Ladies, I think each of you, just by the very nature of what you do and who you are personally, are inspirational. I would like to know, have you had someone or or you've looked at from afar who has inspired you to achieve in law or to achieve in life, or just to keep putting one foot in front of the other? Has there been someone that you've looked to and said, that if she can do it, I can do it? Lynn, anyone in your life like that?
Just unmute myself again. I've been more driven by caring about the people I'm trying to help than anything else. And I think that ties up with what Simone and Bridget were saying before too. When you've had your own hardships, you realise the importance of someone sort of caring. If you're going to put yourself in a position of someone trying to help other people, but there's so many people I've admired along the way. I don't think there would be one, but part of one of my greatest joys when we first started the project was asking the Honourable Tony Fitzgerald to be the first chair of the advisory board of the project. And he was one of my heroes through all the work he did. And then following him, we had the Honourable Mary Gaudron come on as chair, and Australia's first female High Court judge. And now we have the Honourable Ian Callanan. So there's been sort of people like that are just amazing, that I just have been so fortunate, and many others, so fortunate just to be around, and all those internationally as well who work in the innocence movement, who have changed so much in the criminal justice system over there as well. And so, and to be honest, the exonerees themselves, when I think of them spending 20 and 30 or however many years they spend in prison, and just surviving that kind of hardship and then coming out, that's resilience at a level that, I still find hard to fathom. And so in a way, they're sort of the heroes of the journey I've been on.
And yet I expect none of them think they're anything special.
No, probably not. One of the loveliest things is that, that they communicate to each other. They understand as a group what they've been for, and part of the conference every year that usually happens in the US is they're able to come together and be with those other people. But one of the recent things the exonerees were telling the project directors was, take some time for yourself and don't get too burnt out, because we need you there. I think when you are like that and you are disempowered and you need help, the fact that there are some people out there, you may not be successful at all. In fact, there's been many cases where, we weren't able to achieve the outcome we thought would have been the just outcome. But you just have to keep doing what you think is the right thing to do.
No, it's not easy. What about you, Simone? Have you had a coach or a mentor or someone from afar that you've admired?
So as part of going to the bar, you have what's called masters. So you have a senior master and a junior master. And I was very fortunate to have two amazing masters. My senior master was Phil Looney, or was, I suppose, because he's no longer my senior master. He's still a barrister that I do a lot of work with. And he has been instrumental really in helping me to develop my career as a barrister to where I am today. And Catherine Carew of the Family Court was, at the time that I went to the bar, a junior barrister. She actually took silk during her year as my master. So I used to say I was overqualified because I had two senior masters, had nothing to do with me, of course. But she was, and still is, a wonderful example of a female leader in the law. But I tend to agree with Lynn. I don't necessarily have, you know, that one outstanding person that I sort of revere, so to speak, but I like to draw inspiration and motivation from the people that you meet every day. They might be the people that you're working with on a matter at the particular time. They might be the clients. I find drawing inspiration and motivation from those sorts of interactions is much more realistic and sustainable and relevant for me. So, you know, each time I meet, particularly a good barrister, male or female, but often, you know, it is females that you're drawn to in terms of your role model, I try and take something from barristers that I find to be particularly good at what they do. So I'm currently one of the junior counsel on the Disability Royal Commission, and one of the senior counsellors, Kate Eastman, down in Sydney. And I had the pleasure of doing a 2-week sitting with Kate in Sydney before COVID, and just to watch her interact with the witnesses with disability, as well as watching her as an advocate, was a great experience, and obviously will continue over the coming years. So, but you know, she's someone that I'm in regular meetings with now, so it's not as though, you know, she's untouchable to me, so to speak, but I can certainly take from her, and you know, my observations of her can help to shape who I want to be as well.
Yes, she's a wonderful role model for many. Excuse my dog in the background. I'm so sorry. My canine assistant. So, Bridget, what about you? Have you had someone that you look to for inspiration?
Not one particular person, you know, that I would put on a pedestal. I've always really respected both of my parents. You know, both of them, you know, came from pretty meager circumstances, and I think had, you know, a good set of values, and, you know, respect each other, respected other people. You know, they both worked hard. My mother, you know, was endured, you know, any number of moves while my father worked, and, you know, I guess I just had a lot of time for the way they handled us growing up and each other. But I'm not remotely interested in celebrity or you know, anything like that. I'm pretty grounded that way, so I don't have any. No, I think I kind of like talking to just about anybody, and getting whatever you can get, you know, out of that conversation. I have a lot of time. I had a very bad episode a year ago at work with what I will call an extraordinary lack of collegiality, and that probably said to me or demonstrated to me one of the things that I have always deeply, deeply valued is collegiality, and, you know, respect at all levels of an organization. And I suppose that's what inspires me is, you know, people who just go about their daily business being good to other people.
Yes. Isn't it funny? We're getting back to that theme of mutual support and looking out for one another, and I think that's what drives respect, and they're both vital in our profession. Ladies, I'm going to ask you to flip that equation now, because I know many of you would have been approached to be a mentor or just to even have a cup of coffee with a law student or a law grad to tell them what it's really like to do the job you do. Do you find yourself doing that? Are you commonly asked or sought out as mentors? Yeah. Yes.
I have a lot of coffee.
I was going to say, I was on a call last week where a fabulous lawyer said she's always very grateful when people approach her on LinkedIn and give her a call and say, I admire you, would I be able to have a coffee? But as she said, I only have so many hours a day and I can only drink so much coffee. So she was giving us advice about how she would appreciate if I was to approach her to be a mentor, what she would want me to do. And I'm wondering, do you have advice for our audience as to what you would need them to do if if they wanted 5 minutes, 10 minutes of your time and a cup of coffee? I can see Lynn's going to tell us.
To be honest, I wouldn't, except I only drink coffee in the morning, because otherwise I won't. and I do love coffee. You know, one of the lovely things about having worked in a university for so long is, and particularly doing the project where you get to have time with a small group of students, is you just get to be part of an environment where you're all working together, and you're talking about issues as they arise. You know, for any of the young ones coming through, I just think don't be afraid to ask if there is someone they do, because you know, it's a nice thing to be able to do, and I'm sure if people are able to, they'd love to give 5 minutes of their time to chat and you know, just whatever we might be able to offer, or they might be able to offer. I'm sure they'd be really happy to do that, because you know, the young ones coming through the future.
Sure are. What about you, Bridget? You must get calls all the time.
I do. And I think, like Lynn, it's probably also a feature of I've done a lot of teaching, so I'm kind of in contact with that market. There is a difference between having a mentor and trying to make connections for the purpose of getting a job.
Mm-hmm.
And because I, work in government, I don't have control or necessarily the ability to assist someone in finding employment. But the sort of things that I think are reasonable to expect in a mentor relationship, I'm always happy to talk about my own experience, or to offer advice about something that's gone wrong in somebody else's workplace in confidence, or review a CV and provide a perspective on if it looks good or if it should be tinkered with. So I think respecting that boundary between using senior people to try and achieve an employment goal and building and fostering connections to learn. I'm pretty happy to plonk just about anybody in a hearing with me, but that doesn't mean that I can offer more than that, if that.
Yeah, no, thank you, Bridget. We need this very frank and honest advice, because a lot of us are told you must be out there networking, making connections. But as this woman said last week, she's very happy to help, but she's got limited time and resources. So she needs to know exactly why you're interested in me. What do you think I can provide to you? And if I can't provide that, I'll be very upfront and tell you it's not me, but I may know someone else who can help. So I think that's a skill. Simone, do you think that you'd probably find people wanting to shadow you at the bar, do you?
So, yes, certainly. So you'll often have people say, can I come along and sit in? And I almost always say yes if it's appropriate and if I've got an appropriate matter.
Mm.
I've got the chambers in Brisbane and Gold Coast, but I do find I have more students come into the Gold Coast chambers and try and make connections and attend functions and things like that there, and I have no difficulty with that, including coffees and all of those sorts of things. But I would echo what Bridget said. I think as a barrister's chambers, you actually have the ability to assist people to make connections in terms of employment, because they can attend CLEs or social functions at the chambers and have the ability to make connections with a number of different employers in the one room on a particular occasion. But I am a little bit jaded with formal mentoring insofar as I have had the experience where a student has actually secured employment and then has just continued coming back to me and seeking further employment, and that is quite taxing. And I also see mentoring and connections is something that everybody needs to do. So, it's not that you can commit all of your time to one person, but perhaps having given that one person a leg up, now it would be a good time for them to let somebody else also achieve some of those outcomes. So I think it's just about, also obviously mentoring and connections, it all depends on the individual rapport. So it's obviously really important to be yourself as much as possible, because we're not always going to absolutely hit it off, but it's hard to judge, the longevity of your relationship if you're not at least trying to be yourself in those first interactions.
No, absolutely.
Be true to yourself and things tend to work out.
I think most people get a very good sense of who others are within that first 5 minutes. And if you're not being authentic, you really can see through people. So yeah, I think I agree with you entirely. Try to be yourself.
Yeah, and there's no fast track to success. So meeting one person or making one connection is not necessarily going to transform your career, and you can't put that pressure necessarily on that one person, but perhaps just take their lead, and if they introduce you to opportunities or events or other people, it's then a matter for you to take that introduction and run with it. I think there is still a little bit of a perception, once I'm with this person, then that's going to change my career. Not always.
No. That's right. And you've got to take charge of your own career and your own life, really, haven't you? You've got to call the shots at some point. It's all well and good to ask for help, but you've got to make the decisions yourself.
And the bar is a very good example. I mean, the bar is structured on a collegiate approach. We all remember being junior barristers. We all remember the support that we got. So it's sort of embedded in our culture. So to assist students to make connections is of no difficulty to me at all. And anyone watching can feel free to send an email to me and come and have a coffee. That's absolutely no trouble at all.
And I think too, we shouldn't forget the colleagues sitting right beside us in the lecture halls, in the tute groups. These will be people who we will need in the profession. That's the network you start with, isn't it? Your colleagues. So don't go through law school not meeting everyone you already know and getting to know them, because you'll be able to help one another. Again, that collaborative spirit of the law, and remembering who is a friend and who is a foe, and we take that with us, don't we, as we progress through the profession. So yes, good to keep our eyes and ears open from the very early days of law school. All right, ladies, I think we're approaching nearly the end, and I did want to ask you, given you've had such fabulous careers and I consider you all such inspirational role models, I'd like to know what you would tell your junior self. So think back to your early days in law school as a junior lawyer, a graduate. What now, with the benefit of hindsight, what advice would you give to your junior lawyer self that would help you progress to where you want to be? So let's start. Bridget, we might go in reverse order. What would you tell your junior lawyer self?
Maybe the best skill you can develop is understanding what you don't know. And I think one of the things I probably did not suffer from in my early 20s was confidence. And I say that some of that was probably misplaced. So, understanding, because if you know what you don't know, you can go and find the answer.
Very good. Very good. Now, Lynn, what would you tell your junior lawyer self?
I would actually tell her to be more confident, because I didn't have a lot of confidence at all. And I'd almost say don't worry about it, in the sense that be guided by what draws you in, rather than thinking too much about yourself even. But yeah, and I have seen, over the years, many young women who are really brilliant, and maybe could use a little bit more confidence as well. So yeah, don't be afraid, and probably not for myself so much, but don't be afraid to talk to your fellow students and colleagues as well, in the sense that especially now with COVID, it's getting more and more isolated, and I think sometimes the opportunities when they present themselves to just really maybe step out of your comfort zone to say hello or to be friendly.
I had a friend once who said that they try everything twice, just in case they got it wrong the first time. I think that's what you're trying to tell us to do. Give life a go. Get out there and try things. Absolutely.
Yes, yeah.
And Simone, what would you tell your junior self?
I would probably say don't get caught up in the sort of mass hysteria that I think sometimes exists at university around getting particular jobs at particular firms and all of that sort of thing. I don't know if that still exists, but that was certainly the case when I was at university. And there was a perception that if you didn't get a graduate job at this particular type of firm, then your career was effectively over before it started. I think it's, if at all possible, and it is challenging when you're in your early 20s, but try to be true to yourself. So if you think that that is probably not for me for a whole range of reasons, that I might be better placed at the smaller law firm where I'm quite possibly going to get more experience than at the bigger law firm anyway, then I should stick with that, and I should do that because that works for me. I still recall just being in the law library at Bond and just that intensity around, getting certain jobs at certain firms. And it certainly doesn't work for everybody. Even those who ultimately get them aren't always, the happiest lawyers that we know. And some are. I've got good friends who are, senior partners at Mitchell Ellison at, under 40 and having a wonderful life. So it works for some people, but you've just got to be true to yourself. And that's probably the biggest piece of advice. Don't get caught up in thinking, I've got to do this, I've got to follow this path. Everybody's different. What will work for you won't work for someone else. And spend some time and some self-reflection figuring that out. That time will never be wasted.
Absolutely. And I think too, we're spoilt for choice in the law because there are so many career paths you can follow. And as we were saying earlier, nothing's ever wasted. So you can go down one path and say, yes, I've liked that to this point, but I'd like to try something else. And you can either double back or go forward up another, pathway. So nothing is ever wasted. So many opportunities. And as I was saying, legal practice, as we know, it is changing. This is an incredibly exciting time to be in this profession. And I'd encourage everyone to join Sarah in the Law Student Associations, make connections there, really get to know your colleagues there because they will be your colleagues and they will go amazing places, as will every member of our audience. We don't have a crystal ball, but I just say let's make our future what we want it to be. We're inspired by these incredible women today, all driven by both passion and purpose. And I think, gosh, if we could take their stories and reflect on those and think, yes, I can be just as wonderful as they are, I think we'll all make for a fabulous future profession.
Can I
Sarah,
add one thing?
Please do, Bridget.
I just think it's important that people know, along the way, I have been rejected for, I can't even tell you how many job opportunities. So, is that the right way on the, the L for loser? Many jobs that I applied for, and some that I was really emotional about not getting. And eventually you will find something that fits you. So don't be afraid to lose.
You don't get honest and frank advice like this if you just, tune into Oprah Winfrey. You need to meet the people. And you've delivered, Sarah. You've delivered 3 very, very authentic lawyers who've told us like it is. And I'm very proud to have been part of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just quickly from me, guys, I know we promised 7 o'clock, so I'll just be very quick. I just really wanted to say thank you all so much. Jackie, Anne-Marie and the College of Law, thank you for such unwavering support throughout such unprecedented times, but also always. We're so lucky to have you. To our speakers, Simone, Bridget and Lynn, thank you so much for your enthusiasm and attendance. I had a look, I think I emailed you in November of last year, and every single one of you got back to me, I think within a few days, saying, absolutely, I'd love to come along and help. So we're so grateful to have such inspiring, such motivated, such brilliant women to look up to. You are absolutely role models for sure. Finally, ticket holders and attendees, thank you so much for bearing with us all year. I'm not going to lie, this whole thing has been a headache. It's been, are we in person? Are we not? I don't know. No, we're online. No, we're in person. But I'm glad and relieved that we've been able to pull something together. And everyone just fingers crossed for an in-person breakfast in 2021.
Well done. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening. Stay safe. Stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night now.